I'm Celeste Morrison, 28, and I thought I knew what family loyalty meant until my wedding day arrived. My parents chose a spontaneous Big Sur getaway over witnessing me say I do to the love of my life. What started as heartbreak turned into the most calculated revenge I've ever orchestrated. They thought missing my wedding was just a small hiccup in our relationship, but what I discovered about their true priorities and what I did about it changed our family dynamic forever. Some betrayals deserve consequences that last a lifetime. Hey everyone, before we dive into this wild family drama, I'm curious, where are you watching from today? If you're ready for a story about family betrayal that'll make your jaw drop, smash that like button and hit subscribe because you won't believe how this wedding drama unfolds. Trust me, what my parents did was just the beginning, and what I discovered about them will shock you even more than it shocked me. Let's get into this revenge story that proves sometimes family can hurt you the deepest. Growing up in Marin County, I was the poster child for the perfect daughter. My parents, Richard and Linda Morrison, built their reputation in our affluent community on their family values and their successful real estate business. Dad was the charming salesman who could convince anyone to buy $1 million home, while Mom was the meticulous planner who never missed a detail. They were the couple everyone envied at country club events, always perfectly dressed and seemingly devoted to each other and their only child. For 28 years I believed their performance. I excelled in school, graduated summa cum laude from Stanford, and landed a prestigious job at a tech startup in San Francisco. When I met Jake Thompson at a networking event 2 years ago, I thought I'd found my soulmate. He was kind, ambitious, and most importantly, he loved me unconditionally, something I was starting to realize I'd never truly experienced at home. Jake proposed on Christmas Eve last year, and I was over the moon. We immediately started planning our dream wedding for October 15th. I wanted something elegant but intimate. About 150 guests at the Napa Valley Vineyard, where Jake and I had our first weekend getaway. My parents seemed excited, offering to pay for the entire event, which I thought was their way of showing love and support. The planning process revealed cracks I'd been blind to my entire life. Mom criticized every choice I made, from the flowers too common to the menu not sophisticated enough for our guests. Dad was rarely present for planning discussions, always citing work commitments. When I suggested Jake's parents contribute to the cost, Mom's response was telling. "This is about the Morrison family image, Celeste. We can't have people thinking we can't afford our own daughter's wedding." Their obsession with appearances became suffocating. They invited business associates I'd never met while questioning whether Jake's childhood friends were appropriate for our guest list. They upgraded the bar package without consulting me, hired a photographer whose style I hated because he was well connected in our social circle, and changed our carefully selected menu to include dishes I was allergic to because they were more impressive. But I pushed down my resentment, telling myself they just wanted the best for me. Jake was more perceptive, gently pointing out how my parents seemed more invested in throwing a party than celebrating our love. "Celeste," he said one evening after a particularly stressful planning session, "this doesn't feel like our wedding anymore. It feels like their social event that happens to feature us." 3 weeks before the wedding, everything changed. I was having lunch with my college friend Sarah when she casually mentioned seeing my parents at a travel agency in downtown San Francisco. "They looked so excited," she said. The agent was showing them brochures for Big Sur resorts. "Are you guys planning a family trip after the wedding?" My blood ran cold. My parents hadn't mentioned any travel plans to me. That evening I confronted them over dinner. Their response was casual, almost dismissive. "Oh, we booked a little getaway to Big Sur for the weekend after your wedding," Mom said, cutting her salmon. "The Ventana Big Sur resort had a last-minute cancellation, and you know how impossible it is to get reservations there." "The weekend after my wedding," I repeated slowly. "Well, actually," Dad chimed in, not meeting my eyes, "we moved it up a bit. We're leaving Friday morning." Friday morning. My wedding was Saturday afternoon. The room fell silent, except for the clinking of silverware. You're leaving the morning before my wedding. My voice was barely a whisper. Celeste, don't be dramatic, Mom sighed. We'll be back Sunday evening. It's just one night. The ceremony isn't until 4 p.m. Saturday, so we'll have plenty of time to get ready when we return Saturday morning. I stared at them in disbelief. Big Sur is 4 hours away. If there's any traffic, any delays, any problems with the car. There won't be, Dad said firmly. We've done this drive dozens of times. Besides, this might be our last chance for a romantic getaway before you start giving us grandchildren. The casualness of their dismissal hit me like a physical blow. They were willing to risk missing their only daughter's wedding for a spa weekend. As I sat there watching them continue eating, as if they hadn't just shattered my heart, I realized something fundamental about my relationship with my parents. I had never been their priority. I had been their project, their accessory, their way of maintaining their perfect image. But when it came to their actual wants and desires, I came second. That night I called Jake sobbing. He drove straight to my apartment and held me while I told him everything. They might not make it, I kept repeating. They're choosing a vacation over my wedding day. Then we'll have the most beautiful wedding with the people who actually want to be there, Jake said, stroking my hair. Your parents are making their choice, Celeste. Now you get to make yours. His words planted a seed that would grow into something my parents never saw coming. If they could prioritize their desires over my most important day, then maybe it was time I started prioritizing my own interests over their feelings. I spent the next 3 weeks smiling, nodding, and playing the dutiful daughter while my mind worked on something much deeper. They had no idea that their decision to put a Big Sur weekend ahead of my wedding would cost them far more than a few days at a resort. They were about to learn that some betrayals have consequences that echo for years, and that the daughter they'd taken for granted had inherited more of their calculating nature than they'd ever realized. October 15th dawned crisp and clear, the perfect autumn day I'd dreamed of for my wedding. The Napa Valley vineyard was stunning, with golden leaves creating a natural cathedral and the rolling hills providing a breathtaking backdrop. Everything looked like a fairy tale, except for the glaring absence of the two people who should have been there no matter what. Friday night had been torturous. My parents had stuck to their plan, packing their Mercedes with weekend bags and driving off to Big Sur with cheerful waves, as if they were just running errands, instead of potentially missing the most important day of their daughter's life. See you tomorrow, sweetheart, Mom had called out the window. We'll be back in plenty of time. But Saturday morning came and went with no word from them. No text, no call, nothing. Jake's mother, Patricia, stepped in without hesitation, helping me with my hair and makeup while trying to mask her obvious disapproval of my parents' absence. Some people have different priorities, honey, she said gently while fastening my grandmother's pearl necklace. But today is about you and Jake, and everyone who's here loves you both. By noon, I had to make the devastating call to our wedding coordinator. We need to hold 2 seats in the front row, I said, my voice barely steady. But please have the ushers ready to fill them if my parents don't arrive by 3:45. The wedding party rallied around me with fierce loyalty. My maid of honor, Emma, kept checking her phone for updates, while simultaneously keeping me distracted with funny stories from college. Jake's best man, his brother Marcus, kept muttering under his breath about priorities and unbelievable selfishness. But it was Jake himself who held me together. Celeste, he said, taking my hands as we stood in the bridal suite 30 minutes before the ceremony. I need you to hear this. Your parents' absence says nothing about you and everything about them. You are loved, you are valued, and you are about to marry someone who will never ever make you question your worth. At 3:55 p.m., 5 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, I finally received a text from my mother. Sweetie, we're running late. Car trouble. Start without us, we'll be there soon. So sorry, love you, car trouble. They were still in Big Sur. I stared at the message and something crystallized inside me. Not sadness anymore, not even anger. Just cold, calculated clarity. They had made their choice, and now I would make mine. Jake's father, William, appeared at my side. "Would you like me to walk you down the aisle, Celeste?" he asked quietly. "It would be my honor." I looked at this man, who had known me for only 2 years, but was offering to fill the role my own father had abandoned. "Yes," I said, my voice stronger than it had been all day. "I would love that." Walking down the aisle with William Thompson, I felt a strange sense of liberation. Every step took me further away from the family that had failed me and closer to the one that was choosing me. Jake's face lit up when he saw us, and I realized that this moment, this choice to continue without my parents, was actually perfect. I was literally walking away from people who saw me as optional and towards someone who saw me as essential. The ceremony was beautiful. Our officiant, knowing the situation, had quietly adjusted his words to focus on the family we choose rather than the families that unite today. When Jake and I exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the vineyard, except for the 2 empty seats in the front row that seemed to mock the entire celebration. My parents finally arrived during the reception 45 minutes after dinner had been served. They rushed in looking windswept and flustered, Mom still in her casual Big Sur outfit, Dad's hair messed from what had clearly been a frantic drive. They tried to slip in quietly, but their entrance caused a noticeable stir among the guests who had been whispering about their absence all evening. Celeste's mom rushed over to me at the head table, arms outstretched. "We made it. I'm so sorry, sweetheart." The car had some issue with the battery, and then there was construction on Highway 1, and I stood up slowly, my wedding dress rustling in the sudden silence that had fallen over our section of the reception. Every eye was on us, including the photographer who had instinctively started capturing what was obviously a significant moment. "You missed it," I said simply, my voice carrying clearly in the quiet space. "Missed what? We're here now, the party's still going." Dad jumped in, his sales pitch energy feeling grotesquely inappropriate. "You missed your daughter's wedding," I continued, my tone steady and matter of fact. "You missed me walking down the aisle. You missed our vows. You missed the first dance, the toasts, the dinner. You missed everything that mattered because you chose a vacation over your only child's wedding day." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Guests at nearby tables had stopped pretending not to listen. My parents stood there, clearly expecting me to laugh it off, to welcome them with understanding and forgiveness, like I had my entire life. Instead, I turned to Jake, who immediately stood and took my hand. "Thank you all for coming," I announced to the reception, my voice projecting clearly. "For those of you who were here for the actual ceremony, you know how meaningful this day has been. For those who prioritized other commitments, I hope your trip was worth it." The message was unmistakable. My parents' faces went through a series of expressions: confusion, embarrassment, and finally the dawning realization that this wasn't going to be smoothed over with apologies and excuses. But they had no idea that their humiliation at my wedding reception was just the opening act. What I had planned for them would make this public embarrassment look like a gentle slap on the wrist. The week after my wedding, Jake and I left for our honeymoon in Tuscany, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to my parents' Big Sur trip than they'd admitted. Their excuse about car trouble felt rehearsed, and the timing was too convenient. During a romantic dinner in Florence, I finally voiced my suspicions to Jake. "Something doesn't add up," I said, swirling my wine glass. "My parents are obsessively punctual. Dad hasn't been late to anything in 20 years. And Mom plans everything down to the minute. The idea that they'd risk missing my wedding for a spontaneous getaway doesn't fit their pattern." Jake set down his fork, giving me his full attention. "What are you thinking?" "I think they never intended to make it back in time," I said slowly, the words crystallizing a suspicion I'd been harboring. "I think they used Big Sur as an excuse to skip my wedding entirely." But why would they do that? That was the question that haunted me for the rest of our honeymoon. Why would parents who had spent $60,000 on a wedding choose not to attend it? Why would people so concerned with their social image risk the gossip and judgment that would inevitably follow their absence? When we returned to Spot, San Francisco, I decided to investigate. I started with social media, combing through my parents' Facebook and Instagram accounts. What I found made my stomach turn. Mom had posted multiple photos from their Big Sur weekend, and the timestamps told a damning story. Friday evening sunset dinner at Nepenthe. Sometimes you just need to escape with your love. Number Big Sur, number romance, number weekend getaway. Saturday morning, morning yoga, overlooking the Pacific. This is what peace looks like. Number mindfulness, number Big Sur, number self-care. Saturday afternoon, posted at 4:17 p.m., exactly when my ceremony was starting. Couples massage at the spa. Nothing better than reconnecting with your forter soulmate. Number spa day, number recharge, number romance. They had been getting couples massages while I was saying my vows. But the most revealing post came Saturday evening, perfect day with my husband, celebrating 30 years of marriage. Sometimes you need to prioritize your relationship above everything else. Number anniversary, number 30 years, number prioritize love anniversary. They had turned my wedding weekend into their anniversary celebration. I sat in my home office staring at the photos of my parents toasting each other, while 150 of our friends and family had been asking where they were. The car trouble story was completely fabricated. They had planned this all along, but I needed more evidence before I confronted them. I called the Ventana Big Sur Resort, posing as my mother's assistant, checking on an upcoming reservation. "Oh yes, Mrs. Morrison," the helpful concierge said. "We have her reservation right here. Checked in Friday, October 14th, checked out Sunday, October 16th. Premium ocean view suite with the romance package. How can I help you? Romance package? Yes, the 30th anniversary celebration package. Champagne service, couples massage, private dinner on the terrace. It was booked 6 months ago." 6 months ago? They had been planning to skip my wedding before we'd even sent save the dates. You know what, I need to pause here for a second because this discovery was so shocking that I literally had to sit down and process it. If you're watching this and thinking about your own family relationships, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever discovered something about your family that completely changed how you saw them? Hit that like button if you're ready to see how deep this betrayal actually went, because what I found next made their wedding absence look like nothing. My hands were shaking as I hung up the phone. I felt like I was seeing my parents clearly for the first time in my life. Every excuse, every justification they'd given me was a lie. They had deliberately chosen to celebrate their anniversary during my wedding weekend, booking it months in advance, and then lied about car trouble to cover their tracks. But I still needed to understand the why. What had motivated them to hurt me so deeply? I decided to visit them unannounced the following Saturday. I drove to their Marin County home, the sprawling Mediterranean-style house where I'd grown up believing I was loved and valued. I let myself in with my key, calling out as I entered. In the kitchen, sweetheart Mom's voice rang out cheerfully. I found them having coffee and reading the newspaper, the picture of domestic bliss. They looked up with bright smiles as if nothing had changed between us. "Celeste, what a lovely surprise," Mom said, standing to hug me. "How was the honeymoon? I want to hear everything." The casual normalcy of it all made my blood boil. They were acting like concerned, loving parents, as if they hadn't betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. "Actually," I said, declining the hug and remaining standing, "I wanted to talk to you both about Big Sur." Their smiles flickered slightly, but Dad recovered quickly. "Oh, that unfortunate weekend. We felt terrible about the car trouble, sweetheart. But you handled everything so gracefully." "Interesting," I said, pulling out my phone. "Because I called the Ventana Resort yesterday." The color drained from Mom's face. They told me about your 30th anniversary celebration package, the one you booked 6 months ago. The couple's massage you were getting exactly when I was walking down the aisle. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Dad cleared his throat, his salesman persona trying to resurface. Celeste, I think there's been some confusion. The only confusion I interrupted is how I spent 28 years believing you cared about me more than yourselves. Mom's eyes filled with tears, but for the first time in my life, I didn't feel compelled to comfort her. Sweetheart, you don't understand. It's complicated. No, it's actually very simple. You prioritized your anniversary over your daughter's wedding. You lied about it. And you've spent the last 3 weeks acting like nothing happened. We raised you, we paid for your education, we gave you that beautiful wedding. Dad started, his voice rising. You paid for a party to show off to your friends, I said coldly. You just didn't bother showing up to it. As I walked out of their house that day, I realized that their betrayal wasn't just about missing my wedding. It was about years of conditional love, of being valued only when it served their image, of being treated as an accessory to their perfect life rather than a person deserving of unconditional love. They had made their choice. Now it was time for me to make mine, and they had no idea what was coming for them. Over the next month I dove deeper into my parents' lives, and what I discovered shattered every remaining illusion I had about who they really were. My investigation started accidentally when I offered to help them organize their home office for a family gathering. What I found in their files revealed a pattern of selfishness and manipulation that went far beyond skipping my wedding. Hidden in a folder marked personal, I found a stack of greeting cards that made my heart stop. Birthday cards, graduation cards, Christmas cards. All addressed to me, all from my maternal grandmother who had died 5 years ago. Cards I had never received. The earliest card was from my 16th birthday. My dearest Celeste, I hope you know how proud I am of the young woman you're becoming. I've enclosed a check for your college fund. Love always, Grandma Rose. The check stub was still attached, $5,000. There were dozens of cards spanning 12 years each, containing money for college graduation, my first job, even my engagement. Cards my parents had intercepted and hidden money they had kept for themselves. The amounts were staggering, over $40,000 that my grandmother had intended for me. But it got worse. I found correspondence between my parents and my grandmother's lawyer after her death. She had left me $75,000, her will money that was supposed to fund my future. My parents, as the executors of her estate, had convinced the lawyer that I was financially irresponsible and had the money transferred to a trust fund that turned out to be their own investment account. My inheritance, money my grandmother had worked her entire life to save for me, had been used to fund their lifestyle. The European vacation they took the year after Grandma Rose died. The kitchen renovation they couldn't stop bragging about. The new Mercedes Dad drove. All of it paid for with my stolen inheritance. I photographed everything with trembling hands, my mind reeling from the scope of their betrayal. This wasn't just about missing my wedding anymore. This was about years of theft, lies, and emotional manipulation. But the most devastating discovery was yet to come. In a file labeled insurance, I found documents that revealed the true depth of their selfishness. My parents had taken out a life insurance policy on me when I was 18, naming themselves as beneficiaries. The policy was worth $500,000, and they had been paying the premiums for 10 years. The paperwork included email exchanges with their insurance agent that made me physically sick. In one email Dad had written, "We want to make sure we're protected if something happens to Celeste before she gets married and starts her own family. She's our only child, and we've invested so much in her future." Their insurance agent had responded, "This is smart planning, Richard. Many parents don't consider the financial impact of losing an adult child." They had literally bet on my death. I sat in their office surrounded by evidence of their betrayal and finally understood why they had skipped my wedding. It wasn't about their anniversary or needing couple time. It was because my marriage represented the end of their control over me. A married daughter with a supportive husband might start asking questions about her inheritance, might become financially independent, might not need them anymore. They had skipped my wedding because it marked the beginning of their irrelevance in my life, and they couldn't bear to witness it. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Haven't heard from you in weeks, sweetheart, let's have lunch soon." The casual emoji, the fake sweetness, the complete lack of acknowledgement of what they had done, it all felt like a slap in the face. They thought they could continue manipulating me, continue pretending to be loving parents while stealing from me and betting on my death. I spent that evening with Jake, showing him everything I had discovered. He listened in stunned silence, his face growing darker with each revelation. "They stole from you," he said finally. "For years. They took money your grandmother left specifically for you and used it for their own pleasure. And they have a life insurance policy on me," I added, still struggling to process that particular betrayal. "That's..." Jake ran his hands through his hair. "That's sociopathic, Celeste. Normal parents don't take out life insurance policies on healthy adult children. They've been treating me like an investment my entire life," I realized out loud. "When I was young, I was their tax deduction and their claim to respectability. Now I'm their insurance policy and their retirement plan." Jake took my hands, his expression fierce. "What do you want to do about this?" That was the question, wasn't it? I could confront them, demand the money back, threaten to expose them. But I knew my parents well enough to know they would deny everything, play the victim, and somehow make me feel guilty for questioning their love. Or I could do something more fitting. Something that would teach them the same lesson they had taught me, that love and loyalty should never be taken for granted. "I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve," I said, and for the first time since my wedding day, I smiled with genuine happiness. Jake looked concerned. "What are you thinking? They've spent my entire life teaching me that family is conditional, that love has a price, and that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. They've shown me that they see me as an asset rather than a daughter." I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through contacts. "So I'm going to treat them exactly the same way they've treated me. Like business associates who have outlived their usefulness." The plan that formed in my mind over the next few days was beautiful in its simplicity and devastating in its effectiveness. My parents had taught me well, they just never expected me to use their lessons against them. The plan I crafted was methodical, legal, and absolutely devastating. If my parents wanted to treat our relationship as a business transaction, then I would give them a masterclass in consequences and accountability. First, I consulted with an estate attorney about my grandmother's inheritance. Armed with the evidence I'd found, we determined that my parents had committed fraud by misrepresenting their intentions to the probate court. The attorney filed a motion to recover the stolen funds, complete with interest and penalties. Within weeks, my parents received legal papers demanding the return of $127,000, the original inheritance plus 10 years of compound interest, but that was just the opening move. Next, I visited my HR department at work and made some strategic changes to my benefits. I removed my parents as emergency contacts, replacing them with Jake and his parents. I updated my life insurance policy, removing them as beneficiaries and adding a clause specifically excluding them from any death benefits. Most importantly, I submitted a formal written request that my employer never release any information about my salary, benefits, or employment status to anyone claiming to be family without my explicit written consent. My parents had always been proud of boasting about my success to their country club friends. They would soon discover that their access to information about my life was officially terminated. Then I got creative. I knew my parents' social calendar like clockwork. They were creatures of habit who attended the same charity galas, country club events, and dinner parties every year. Their reputation in Marin County society was everything to them. They had spent decades building an image as the perfect successful couple with the perfect successful daughter. So I decided to tell everyone the truth. about who they really were. I started with their closest friends, the Hendersons, who were hosting their annual Christmas party, the social event of the season that my parents never missed. I called Margaret Henderson directly. "Margaret, it's Celeste Morrison. I wanted to let you know that my parents might not be themselves at your party this year. They're dealing with some legal issues related to my grandmother's estate. Apparently there were some irregularities with how they handled her will. I thought you should know in case they seem stressed or ask to borrow money." Margaret's shocked silence spoke volumes. By the next day, half of Marin County's social elite knew that the Morrisons were facing legal trouble over estate fraud. I made similar calls to their golf club, their investment advisor, and their favorite restaurant, always framing it as concern for their well-being during this difficult legal situation. I never said anything untrue. I simply shared facts and let people draw their own conclusions. The beauty of small-town social dynamics is that reputation is everything, and once doubt is planted, it grows exponentially. But my masterstroke was yet to come. I knew my parents' biggest fear was losing their standing in the community, so I decided to address it directly. I wrote a letter to the editor of the Marin County Weekly, the local paper that covered society events and featured prominent local families. "Dear editor," I wrote, "I wanted to take a moment to reflect on the importance of family values during this holiday season. As someone who recently married into a wonderful family, I've been thinking about what it truly means to love and support your children unconditionally. Some parents invest emotionally in their children's happiness and success. Others sadly see their children primarily as financial assets or sources of social status. The difference becomes apparent in moments of truth, like when parents choose personal pleasure over their child's most important life events, or when they prioritize their own financial gain over their child's inheritance." Writes, "I'm grateful to have learned these lessons before having children of my own. It's taught me that the family you choose can be more loyal and loving than the family you're born into. During this season of gratitude, I'm thankful for the people who show up when it matters, and I've learned to let go of those who don't." As we move into the new year, I encourage everyone to examine their own relationships and ensure they're investing in people who truly value them in return. Life is too short to waste on conditional love. I signed it Celeste Morrison Thompson, making sure everyone knew exactly who I was and which family I was referencing. The letter was published the week before Christmas, right when everyone in their social circle would be reading the local paper for holiday event coverage. The response was immediate and brutal. My parents started receiving calls from friends who had just heard about their legal troubles. Invitations to holiday parties mysteriously stopped arriving. Their country club golf partners began canceling games. The social isolation they experienced was swift and comprehensive. But the final blow came when I discovered they had been using my name and success to secure better credit terms for their business. I sent formal cease and desist letters to their bank, their business credit cards, and their mortgage company, informing them that I had never authorized the use of my name, credit score, or employment information in connection with my parents' financial accounts. Within a month, my parents found themselves facing legal bills they couldn't afford, social isolation they couldn't understand, and financial scrutiny they couldn't escape. Their perfect life was crumbling, and they had no idea how to stop it. The phone calls started in January. "Celeste, we need to talk." Dad's voice was strained when he called. "There seem to be some misunderstandings that need to be cleared up." "What kind of misunderstandings?" I asked innocently. "People are saying things about the estate, about your grandmother's money. Someone's been spreading rumors." "Rumors," I said. "Or facts?" The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. "We raised you better than this." Celeste Mom's voice came through the speakerphone, tearful and manipulative as always. "Yes, I agreed you did. You taught me that actions have consequences, that people should be held accountable for their choices, and that respect is earned, not given. I learned those lessons very well. They had no idea that this was just the beginning of their education in consequences. By February, my parents' perfect life had completely unraveled and they were finally ready to face the truth about their actions. The legal pressure from the estate fraud case had forced them to liquidate assets to pay restitution. Their social standing in Marin County was destroyed. Most devastating of all, they were beginning to understand that their daughter, the person they had taken for granted for 28 years, was never coming back to their family dynamic. The final confrontation happened on Valentine's Day, which felt poetically appropriate. They showed up at my apartment unannounced, looking haggard and desperate in a way I'd never seen before. Gone was their usual polished appearance and confident demeanor. These were people who had lost control of their narrative and didn't know how to regain it. "We need to fix this," Dad said, without preamble, as I reluctantly let them into my living room. "This has gone too far, Celeste. We're willing to work something out." "Work something out," I repeated, remaining standing while they sat on my couch like supplicants. "You mean like how you worked out stealing my inheritance? Or how you worked out missing my wedding for your anniversary?" Mom's composure cracked first. "We made mistakes, okay? We're not perfect, but we're your parents and family should forgive each other. Family," I said slowly, "should also not steal from each other, lie to each other, or take out life insurance policies on each other." Dad's face went white. They hadn't realized I knew about the insurance policy. "How did you?" He started, then stopped, understanding that the scope of my knowledge was far greater than they had imagined. "I know everything," I said simply. "Every card from Grandma Rose that you hid. Every dollar you stole. Every lie you told. Every time you chose yourselves over your daughter." The room fell silent except for Mom's quiet crying, tears that once would have moved me to comfort her but now left me completely unmoved. "What do you want from us?" Dad asked finally, his voice defeated. "Nothing," I said, and watched their faces register shock. "I don't want anything from you anymore. That's the point." "Celeste, please," Mom whispered. "We can fix this. We can pay you back. We can make it right." "You can't make it right," I said, sitting down across from them. "You can't give me back the grandmother who died thinking I didn't care enough to thank her for her gifts. You can't give me back the wedding day where my parents chose to be present. You can't give me back 28 years of believing I was loved unconditionally." I pulled out a folder I had prepared for this moment. "But you can sign these documents." Dad opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were legal papers I had prepared with my attorney, formal documents, removing them from my emergency contacts, my medical directives, my will, and any future inheritance considerations. There was also a comprehensive no-contact agreement that would prevent them from using my name, image, or information for any purpose without my written consent. "You're disowning us." Mom's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm formalizing what you already chose," I corrected. "You treated me like a business asset instead of a daughter. So now we'll have a business relationship, which is to say no relationship at all." "This is insane." Dad exploded, his salesman facade finally cracking completely. "We made one mistake, we missed one event." "One event," I laughed, "but there was no humor in it. You stole from me for over a decade. You lied about my grandmother's letters. You took out a life insurance policy betting on my death. You missed my wedding because you prioritized your own pleasure. That's not one mistake, that's a pattern of behavior that shows exactly how much I matter to you." "We love you," Mom sobbed. "No," I said quietly, "you loved the idea of me. You loved having a successful daughter to brag about, a well-behaved child who never questioned your authority, a future caretaker for your old age. But you never loved me enough to put my needs before your wants." Jake emerged from our bedroom where he had been quietly waiting. His presence reminded me that I wasn't alone anymore, that I had people in my life who chose me every single day. "Sign the papers or don't," I said, standing up. "The legal consequences of your actions will proceed either way. But if you sign them, this ends here." If you don't, my attorney will pursue every possible avenue for damages, and I'll make sure everyone in your social circle knows exactly what kind of people you really are." They signed. As they prepared to leave, Dad made one last attempt at manipulation. "You'll regret this someday, Celeste. Family is all you have in the end." "You're right," I agreed. "Family is everything. That's why I'm so grateful I found mine." I gestured to Jake, who wrapped his arm around me supportively. "The family that showed up to my wedding. The family that puts my happiness before their convenience. The family that would never steal from me or lie to me, or treat me like an investment strategy." My parents left that day and I haven't spoken to them since. The legal proceedings concluded with them paying full restitution plus damages, money I donated to a scholarship fund for students who had lost grandparents in honor of Grandma Rose. They moved out of Marin County 6 months later, unable to handle the social consequences of their exposed behavior. The most satisfying part wasn't the money or the legal victory, it was the peace I found in finally putting myself first. I learned that setting boundaries isn't cruel, that demanding respect isn't selfish, and that walking away from toxic people, even family, is sometimes the healthiest choice you can make. Some people say blood is thicker than water, but I learned that respect is thicker than blood, and love without respect is just manipulation wearing a prettier mask. So here's my question for all of you watching. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-respect? How do you handle relationships with people who love you conditionally? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories help me feel less alone in this journey. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama and lessons about family dynamics. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that it's okay to demand better treatment from the people who claim to love you. Thank you for listening to my story and for being the kind of community that supports people through difficult family situations. Remember, you deserve love that doesn't come with conditions, and sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into. Until next time, choose people who choose you back, and never apologize for demanding the respect you deserve. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video.